Um, all right, so hi, my name is Meg, and I'm in the data science master's program here. And today I'm going to talk to you guys about executive turnover, specifically CEO turnover and employee satisfaction. We're going to be talking more about the CEO turnover portion of this than the employee satisfaction, just because of the place that we are in the research. It's definitely still ongoing, so I'm excited for any feedback anyone has, or I don't know, ideas, or telling me where I'm wrong or anything like that. So we'll get started. First, I did want to give a little bit of background. I have been kind of immersed in CEO turnover at my company for the past couple of years. So it's something that's kind of always been on my mind. And also at my company, I deal a lot in Glassdoor reviews and get really into those as well. So this is a chance for me to, put those two things together. And so we'll just get started. I had already, from my past company, had a data set of SEC 8K filings, and I'll explain a little bit more what those are in just a bit, from the past 2 years. So this was, again, a chance to use those. We decided to put those together with Glassdoor reviews, but then what became a really big idea that we had was to try and determine if a CEO leaving a company was pushed out of the company or not, because it's honestly very subtle a lot of the times. If it's not very obvious how voluntary a departure is at a company, based on, sometimes it's obvious in the news, but sometimes, if it doesn't get news coverage, it's hard to tell if a CEO was kind of pushed out. There's even forced retirements. There's a lot that can happen around the circumstances of a CEO departure that's not said explicitly in these departure announcements. So that's something we really started focusing on, and that's what I'm going to talk a lot about today. So how can we extrapolate how voluntary a CEO departure is just from the text of an 8K filing? What clues do the text give us to be able to make assumptions about that? So that's a big part of what the project became. So I looked at the literature. There's not a lot of published papers that use Glassdoor as a data set, so I was excited to use that. There's obviously literature around CEO changes, and there's a lot that looks at how does CEO changing affect just like the overall health of a firm financially. And then there's also a lot of employee satisfaction data. Some of the CEO change data doesn't always incorporate this. I'm going to call it like a transition score that I'll be talking about. So that's another way that I think we kind of contribute to this. So our data, and I'm going to start with we've gathered our data mostly through pretty much all through web scraping. So I use Python and Selenium Chrome driver to web scrape Glassdoor data, as well as SEC filings. So Glassdoor, you guys probably know, is where employees can leave reviews about the companies that they work at. But there's a lot of other data points in here, which is why it just like excites me a lot. This is kind of company level data. Obviously, I'll probably get this revenue and company size from probably a more official data set, but they have it in here, and they have the headquarters and where it's founded in the industry and stuff. And then they have an overall rating, but also sub ratings. And they also have these 3 interesting questions that they ask everyone that you don't have to answer, but a lot of people do, about would you recommend working there to a friend? CEO, like, do you approve of the CEO? And what's your overall business outlook? So here is a Glassdoor review example, and we have, so we've parsed out from the HTML the date. We do all of the sub ratings, the overall rating, if it was, what kind of employee it is, and then obviously the text review here, and then the answers to the 3 questions that they ask people when they review. Okay, They also have put this like COVID flag in Glassdoor recently, which I think is just kind of interesting. So 8K filings, it gets a little bit more complicated. So 8K filings are also called the current reports. Public companies have to file a lot of things with the Securities Exchange Commission. 8Ks report events that happen at the firm that need to be reported on a more regular basis, like not annually or quarterly, but closer to when the event happens. Item 5.02s are the ones that announce departure of directors. So every board member that comes and goes has to be reported to the SEC in an item 5.02, as well as pretty much everyone in the C level of a company. So those are the filings we were looking for. So I had 2 years worth of all those filings, and we had to then narrow it down by just the 5.02s, and then narrow it down again by just the ones that talk about specifically CEO departures. So we weren't interested in CFOs, VPs, board members, and things like that. So this is just a filing so you can get a sense of what we're working with here. It doesn't have a good HTML structure for parsing through. When I'm doing the web scraping, it pretty much comes in as like a big chunk of text. Here's an example of what one of the item 5.02 looks like. They're often with other items that we aren't interested in. Here's another example, and these are kind of the things that you'll see in each of them. You'll have the title, and then it'll have the paragraphs, and then they don't have a uniform template, but they're kind of close. There's always kind of an effective date, there's a name, and then there'll be some type of departure word, things like that. So in order to identify the ones that were specifically CEOs, we looked through all the sentences. Well, first we took out just the item 5.02. And again, this is just like a paragraph, like just text. So there's not really anything in the HTML to tell us like, this is what we need. So we parsed that out. And then we went through every sentence in every filing and found if there was a sentence that mentioned a CEO and a departing word. And then we pulled out the name of the person in that sentence that was closest to the departure word. So like, since these are close together, this person would not have been the person we would have found because they're not closest to the departure word. And then we saved that person's name. And then we also flagged that filing as one that we're interested in. So then that just kind of explains how we did it. So then that left us with 1,498 filings over 1,151 unique companies, which means that's how many unique CEO departures we have in about a time span of, like I said, about 2 years. Each I guess section, I wouldn't say it's not the whole filing anymore, but has about between 5,600 and 32 words for an average of about 600 words. So that's what we have, which is great and was good progress. And then we were like, okay, so now let's figure out from all this text, now that we have the ones we want, how voluntary is the departure, from what clues we can get just from what it says in the text. It was pretty subtle. And we made kind of a rule-based algorithm, and my professor and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, I'm working with Dr. Junglis as well, similar to Cole. She helped me kind of like work through all these different rules that we could use, and we ended up with these 6 rules. I might add more later, but this is kind of how we're going to score how voluntary a departure is. So the longer the filing, the more voluntary the change. So if they don't spend a lot of time talking about the person that's leaving, then it's probably a bad sign. Similar to that one is the more times they talk about the person who's leaving. So I remember I told you how I found the name, and we're able to count how many times that name shows up in the filing. And that's going to also be a kind of a variable to determine the score.